The first thing I noticed was that they had all turned to watch me. Hundreds of dolls hanging from cypress trees, perched on moss-covered branches propped against ancient trunks, their plastic and porcelain faces angled in my direction as I stepped off the small motorboat onto the muddy shore of Lake Calavera. My name is Catherine Morrison. 3 years ago, I lost everything that mattered to me. It was supposed to be a perfect family vacation. My husband, David, our 4-year-old daughter, Lily, and me enjoying a weekend on the Oregon coast. But when the weather turned and I insisted we stay on the water just 1 more hour, everything changed. The Coast Guard found our capsized boat 12 miles offshore. They pulled me from the freezing water, unconscious and broken. David and Lily were never found. For 3 years, I'd been drowning in guilt. Then came the inheritance letter from Mexico, property left to me by a great uncle I'd never met. Uncle Miguel Morrison had lived as a hermit on this remote island for 25 years before his death. The lawyer said he'd left everything to his only living relative who shared his birthday, October 31st, the Day of the Dead. "Did you put these here?" I asked Carlos, the weathered local who'd ferried me across the dark water. He shook his head quickly, backing his boat away from shore. "They've been here since the drowning, Senor Morrison. Since La Ahogada claimed this place." La Ahogada? The drowned mother, he whispered, making the sign of the cross. "For 25 years she's been taking children. My own grandson." His voice broke. "I'll return tomorrow at noon. Be ready if you want to leave." The unspoken message was clear. You will want to leave. I watched his boat disappear around the bend, leaving me alone with hundreds of silent watchers. Each doll faced the lake as if waiting for something. Many were antique porcelain with cracked faces and missing limbs. Others were modern toys, their bright colors faded from years in the elements. All had been modified, eyes replaced with dark stones, mouths stitched shut with black thread, clothing carefully arranged and pinned in place. The cabin was surprisingly well kept. Clean surfaces, simple furnishings, and shelves lined with psychology books. But the walls told a different story. Every surface was covered with newspaper, clippings, police reports, and photographs spanning decades. Headlines in Spanish and English chronicled tragedy after tragedy. Child drowns in Lake Calavera, missing girl's body found, police investigate string of disappearances. At the center of it all was a wedding photograph from 1974. A young woman with dark hair and joyful eyes, her hand resting on her visible pregnancy. The caption read, "Maria Elena Vasquez, murdered by husband, Roberto Vasquez, 1975. That's when I found the journal. It sat on the kitchen counter, leather-bound and weathered, with my name written on the first page. For Catherine, who shares the Day of the Dead with me. Read this, understand it, then pray you are stronger than I was." My uncle's careful handwriting told a story that defied belief. Maria Elena Vasquez had been found floating in Lake Calavera 25 years ago, 5 months pregnant. Her husband, Roberto, claimed she'd fallen from their boat, but the autopsy revealed bruises on her throat. He'd murdered her for another woman, and local police, paid off by Roberto's wealthy family, had closed the case as accidental drowning. But Maria Elena had not found peace in death. The journal documented 25 years of missing children, 31 in total, ranging from 4 to 12 years old. They would leave their homes in the middle of the night, walking like sleepwalkers to the shore. Families would find only their clothes folded neatly on the banks. She collects their spirits to replace the baby that was killed with her. Miguel had written, and she collects guilty parents to serve as caretakers for her underwater nursery. Parents like me, whose own child died of pneumonia. Parents like you, Catherine, who failed to save their family from drowning. A chill ran through me. How could he have known about David and Lily? The dolls are Anchors, the journal continued. Each one contains a piece of a child's spirit, keeping them bound to this realm instead of letting them pass on. If the dolls were destroyed, all of them, in a single purifying fire, the children could finally be free. But Maria Elena would kill anyone who tried. As night fell, I noticed the dolls had moved. Every single one now faced the cabin, their painted eyes seeming to focus directly on me through the windows. I grabbed a flashlight and rushed outside, desperate for a rational explanation. But there was none. The dolls were secured with weathered fishing line, aged and brittle, no fresh disturbance around the trees, no footprints except my own. That's when I heard it, children's laughter echoing across the water. I turned toward the sound and saw her walking along the distant shore, a woman in a white dress that clung to her body as if soaked, her pregnant belly clearly visible even from this distance. With each step, translucent figures began to appear around her, children of various ages, all bearing the signs of drowning, blue lips, waterlogged skin, hair that floated as if still underwater, and among them, holding the hand of a solemn girl I somehow knew was my daughter Lily. My daughter looked exactly as she had the last time I saw her alive, blonde hair in a neat braid, yellow raincoat bright against the darkness. But her eyes were different, filled with knowledge no 4-year-old should possess. "Mama," she called across the water, her voice carrying impossibly well. "I've been waiting for you." Every rational thought abandoned me. I ran toward the shore, ready to plunge into the dark water to reach her. But pain exploded through my skull. A migraine so severe I collapsed, vomiting into the grass. When the agony subsided, the shore was empty. The next morning, I tried to leave when Carlos returned. But as I reached the dock, my legs simply stopped moving. Some invisible force held me in place as I watched Carlos wait, then sadly turn his boat around. Like Miguel before me, I was now a prisoner. I returned to the house, but as soon as I arrived, the temperature in the cabin plummeted without warning. My breath came out in visible puffs as frost began forming on the windows. Despite the warm Mexican night outside, the wooden floorboards creaked and groaned as if the entire structure were settling deeper into the earth. Then I heard it, the slow, deliberate drip of water hitting the floor. That night, Maria Elena came for me. I spun around, searching for the source, my heart hammering against my ribs. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing off the walls with unnatural resonance. The dolls outside began to rattle against the windows, their tiny plastic fingers scratching at the glass in a rhythm that matched my racing pulse. "No," I whispered, backing toward the bedroom. "Not real. This isn't real." But the temperature kept dropping, and now I could see my reflection in the frost-covered mirror. Pale, terrified, utterly alone. Behind my reflection, a dark stain began spreading across the ceiling, growing larger with each drop of water that fell. I ran for the back room, my bare feet slipping on the suddenly slick floor. But as I reached for the door handle, it turned to ice under my touch, burning my palm. The pain sent me stumbling backward, just as the living room filled with the sound of rushing water. "Catherine!" The voice came from behind me, soft as a lullaby, terrible as a death rattle. I turned slowly, knowing what I would see but praying I was wrong. She stood in the center of the room where no one had been moments before. Water streamed from her white dress, pooling at her feet and spreading outward in dark ripples. Her pregnancy was grotesquely visible, the unborn child's presence manifesting as something that writhed and pressed against her skin from within. When she lifted her head, I saw that her eyes were not eyes at all, just black voids that seemed to pull light into themselves. "You damaged my equipment," she said, her voice like bubbles breaking on the surface of deep water. Each word sent waves of cold rolling through the room. "That was unwise." My legs gave out. I collapsed against the wall, sliding down until I sat on the floor like a terrified child. "Please," I gasped. I didn't mean..." "Shh." She glided closer, her feet never quite touching the ground.
Fear makes the water taste bitter, Catherine. We must speak calmly.
But terror had me in its grip. I scrambled sideways along the wall, desperate to reach the kitchen, to find a knife, anything. My breath came in short, panic bursts that fogged the freezing air. "I won't help you hurt children," I managed between gasps. Maria Elena's laugh was like the sound of drowning, wet, desperate, final.
Hurt them?
She tilted her head, and water poured from her mouth when she spoke.
I save them, Catherine. I rescue them from a world where fathers murder pregnant wives, where mothers let their children drown while arguing about money.
The room spun around me. Guilt, my constant companion for 3 years, rose up like a tide. Just one more hour, I had said that day. The weather's clearing, while David begged to go back to shore, while Lily asked why Mommy and Daddy were fighting.
You see the truth now,
Maria Elena whispered, suddenly close enough that I could smell the decay of lake water and death on her breath.
You see what you really are?
No. The word came from somewhere deep inside me, from a place I'd buried beneath years of self-hatred. I pressed my palms against the cold wall and forced myself to stand. No, I won't do this. Something flickered in those black voids. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. I love my daughter, I said, my voice growing stronger. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I loved her more than my own life.
Love?
Marielena's form wavered like a reflection in disturbed water.
Love lets children drown.
No. I took a shaky step forward, then another. Love tries to save them, even when it fails, even when it's too late. The wraith that had been Maria Elena studied me with something that might have been curiosity. The malevolent presence in the room shifted, becoming less predatory and more mournful.
You failed your daughter, just as I failed mine, but I offer redemption. Help me gather the children who suffer above and give them eternal peace below.
The children aren't at peace, I said, finding my courage at last. They're prisoners. Maria Elena's face twisted with rage, her form solidifying once more.
Then you will suffer as Miguel suffered. You will watch as I take child after child, knowing you could have served willingly.
Outside, the dolls began to move, walking across the ground like miniature people. They surrounded the cabin, scratching at the windows with tiny plastic fingers. A sound like fingernails on glass, multiplied 100-fold. I barricaded myself in the back room with Miguel's journal, reading his final entries by candlelight. The children have spoken to me in dreams. They don't want to be trapped forever. They want to pass on, to find their families in whatever comes after death. If someone could burn the dolls, all of them, the children's spirits would be released. Catherine, you are stronger than I was. There are cans of gasoline in the storage shed, waterproof matches in the kitchen drawer. If you choose sacrifice over servitude, children will finally find peace. I thought of Lily among Maria Elena's collection. My daughter didn't belong in this underwater prison. She belonged in the light, free from the darkness that had claimed her. All these children did. As dawn broke, I made my choice. I found the gasoline and matches exactly where Miguel had said. The morning air hung thick with unnatural mists that seemed to writhe and coil around my ankles as I stepped outside. The dolls had retreated to their perches, but I could feel their painted eyes tracking my every movement. My hands trembled as I unscrewed the first gas can. The fumes made my head swim, but I forced myself to work methodically, dousing each doll with fuel. As the liquid splashed across their modified faces, some seemed to twitch, as if the trapped spirits within were trying to break free. I had covered perhaps a dozen when the temperature plummeted again.
Stop!
The voice came from everywhere at once. The trees, the water, the very air around me.
You don't understand what you're doing.
I ignored her, moving to the next cluster of dolls. But as I raised the gas can, an invisible force slammed into me, sending me sprawling across the muddy ground. The container flew from my hands, its contents splashing uselessly into the dirt.
I said stop!
Maria Elena materialized directly in front of me. more solid and terrible than ever before. Her waterlogged dress clung to her swollen form, and her black void eyes blazed with fury. I scrambled backward, reaching for another gas can, but she was faster. The lake behind her began to churn and rise, defying gravity as tendrils of dark water stretched toward me like grasping fingers.
"You will not take them from me,"
she shrieked, her voice shattering the morning stillness.
"They are safe. They are mine."
The water tendrils wrapped around my arms and legs, ice cold and impossibly strong. I felt myself being dragged backward toward the lake, my heels digging furrows in the soft earth. The sensation of drowning filled my lungs even though I was still on dry land. That same choking, burning feeling I'd experienced 3 years ago when the Coast Guard pulled me from the wreckage. "Mama!" Lily's voice cut through the chaos, and for a moment I saw her standing among the dolls, her eyes wide with terror. Not the possessed version from last night, but my little girl as she truly was. "Mama, help us!" The sight of her broke something inside me. With a strength I didn't know I possessed, I wrenched one arm free from the water bonds and lunged for the fallen gas can. My fingers closed around the handle just as more water tendrils sought to pull me under. "I won't let you keep her!" I screamed, drenching the nearest dolls with gasoline, even as Maria Elena's supernatural grip tightened around me. "I won't let you keep any of them.
They are children."
Maria Elena's shriek was like the sound of splitting ice.
"Children need protection.
Children need freedom." I fought against the drowning sensation, forcing air into my burning lungs. Around me, more ghostly voices began to rise, children calling out in Spanish and English, begging to be released. The water tendrils squeezed tighter, and my vision began to dim. But then I heard them all clearly. "Please, Señora, please let us go. We want to find our families. We want to go home." With my last conscious breath, I pulled the waterproof matches from my pocket, striking a match with hands that shook from cold and supernatural pressure. "I'm setting them free."
"They are safe with me. Protected."
"They're prisoners," I replied, and despite everything, the drowning sensation, the crushing grip, the terror that threatened to overwhelm me, I thought of Lily's true voice calling for help. Children aren't meant to be kept in underwater cages. Maria Elena's form began to waver as if she were struggling to maintain her hold on this realm and her supernatural assault at the same time. The water bonds loosened for just an instant. It was enough. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking like a wave against stone. "They're all I have, all I've managed to save." "Then you'll understand why I have to do this," I said, and dropped the match. The fire caught instantly, racing along the gasoline trail with supernatural speed. The dolls burst into flames that burned cold and bright, consuming the supernatural bindings that held the children's spirits to this realm. As each doll burned, I heard them, voices whispering thank you as their spirits rose like points of light toward the sky. Their gratitude was universal. Among the ascending lights, I saw her, Lily, glowing brighter than the rest. She turned back for just a moment, and I felt her love wash over me like warm sunlight. "Thank you, Mama," her voice echoed in my mind. "Thank you for letting me go." But Maria Elena's scream of rage shattered the morning air. The lake erupted behind her, a water spout reaching toward the heavens as her power lashed out in fury.
"You have stolen my children,"
she shrieked, no longer beautiful but monstrous with loss. "I've freed them," I said, watching the last flames consume the final doll. "Love doesn't trap, it releases." Maria Elena lunged toward me, her form shifting between woman and water and pure, malevolent force.
"Then you will take their place."
I didn't run. I had accomplished what I came to do. The children were free, and that was worth any price. Her hands closed around my throat, and I felt the cold shock of lake water filling my lungs, even though I was still on dry land. As consciousness faded, I heard Carlos's boat horn in the distance, arriving exactly at noon for a passenger who would never answer. But I had no regrets. As the darkness took me, I saw the children one last time, points of light ascending toward heaven, finally at peace. The last thing I saw was Lily's spirit, shining like a star. 4 months later, Carlos Mendoza sat in his fishing boat, staring at the empty cabin on Lake Calavera. For 25 years, he had been unable to refuse the ghost's summons, forced to ferry victim after victim to their doom. But something was different now. The whispers in his dreams had stopped. The lake no longer felt malevolent, just empty. On his boat seat lay a letter, an inheritance notice for another grieving parent who shared that cursed birthday. Carlos looked at it for a long moment, then struck a match and watched it burn. The cycle would not begin again. The water remembered everything, but now it also remembered that love, true, selfless, sacrificial love, was stronger than even the deepest grief.